There's a linen piece hanging in your closet right now that you bought years ago. It still fits. The color still holds. The seams are still clean. Go buy what looks like the same piece today, wash it 3 times, and watch the stitching pull, the color fade, the fabric lose half its weight. Same name on the tag, completely different product inside it. Here's what's really at stake. The prices are real, the brand names are real, but the linen itself often isn't what it used to be, and most of us haven't noticed, because the tags still say the names we trusted a decade ago. Several of the most familiar names in this space are now owned by the same handful of companies, running the same cost-cutting playbook behind different logos. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which names to be cautious of, and which 3 actually deliver what they charge for, including one that uses the same European flax mills as labels charging 4 times as much. Welcome to Timeless Tresses. Before we get into brands, a quick word on what real linen actually is, because that's where most of the confusion starts. Linen comes from flax, grown primarily in France, Belgium, and Lithuania. The best linen clothing uses 100% European flax fiber at a fabric weight between 180 and 260 grams per square meter. Enough for structure without stiffness, breathable in heat, and it softens with every wash. The fiber is the fiber. An expensive label doesn't make it better. What a lot of brands sell as linen today is actually a blend. Sometimes half polyester, sometimes mostly viscose with a linen touch, while the tag still just says linen. Here's a simple rule of thumb. If a linen garment feels smooth and soft straight out of the packaging, it's probably not pure linen. Real linen has a slight crispness when new, which becomes softness over time. A blend feels soft immediately because synthetic fiber is doing the work. And synthetic fiber doesn't get better with age. It gets worse. Now let's get into the brands, starting with the ones most likely to disappoint you. Avoid 1. Talbots. If you've shopped this brand for 20 or 30 years, this one may sting. I understand the loyalty here completely. This brand's linen popovers were a genuine summer uniform for a whole generation, structured enough for the office, soft enough for a Saturday. Here's the mechanism behind what changed. In 2012, private equity firm Sycamore Partners acquired Talbots for roughly $391 million, after several years of declining sales. What typically follows a private equity turnaround is familiar. The brand name and price point stay the same, while suppliers change, fabrics thin, and quality control loosens. Customer reviews increasingly describe stitching and construction that wouldn't have passed the brand's own standards 15 years ago. Misaligned seams, color fading after just a couple of washes where older pieces held their color for years. The label remembers who it was. The fabric doesn't. The fix is checking the actual fiber content on the care label rather than trusting the name alone, and handling any new piece in person before buying. Feel for that initial crispness that signals real linen rather than a soft-from-the-start blend. Do it today. Pull out that old linen piece you've had for years and compare its weight and hand feel against anything new from the same brand, side by side, before your next purchase. Avoid 2. Jill. This one's a genuine irony, because linen was this brand's founding identity. Artistically dyed, textured pieces designed for women who wanted comfort with personality. I understand the loyalty here too. A lot of women built entire wardrobes around this brand specifically because of that linen reputation, wearing it as a genuine signature rather than just a summer option. Here's the mechanism behind what customers are reporting now. Longtime shoppers are increasingly describing fading after a single wash, poorly finished seams, and a design direction leaning toward younger, cropped silhouettes that its core customer didn't ask for. To be clear, Jill is an independent, publicly traded company. It isn't under the same ownership as Talbots or Chico's, so this isn't the same private equity story playing out twice. The more likely explanation is structural. Maintaining a fast release schedule of new linen collections every few months makes it harder to consistently source the higher-grade flax that built the brand's original reputation. Volume demands cheaper, faster supply, and cheaper supply tends to mean thinner fabric and less consistent weave density. The fix is the same rule as above. Check the fiber content specifically, and don't assume a familiar name still means what it used to mean, even 5 years ago. Do it today. Before your next order, read the actual composition percentage on the listing, rather than trusting the word linen in the product title alone. Avoid 3. Chico's. This is where the ownership picture actually does connect back to Talbots. In January 2024, Sycamore Partners Knitwell Group, which already owned Talbots, Ann Taylor, and Loft, acquired Chico's FAS, including Chico's, White House Black Market, and Soma. That put Talbots and Chico's under the same corporate parent, alongside Ann Taylor, Loft, and Lane Bryant, in a combination worth several $billion in combined annual sales. Here's the mechanism worth understanding. When one company controls this many brands, consolidating suppliers and sharing fabric sources across labels is the standard playbook, often described in corporate language as economies of scale. In practice, that can mean linen from a Chico's blouse and a Talbot's popover coming from very similar sourcing, at a similar cost point, with a different label sewn in at the end of the process. Customers of this brand have increasingly reported narrower selection and linen pieces losing structure within weeks, rather than holding shape through a full summer, even as prices have stayed level or risen. The fix is treating different logo with real skepticism once you know two brands share an owner. Check fiber content and construction on each individually, rather than assuming brand reputation still applies the way it did a decade ago. Do it today. If you shop both of these brands, compare a recent purchase from each side by side. The similarity in fabric hand feel may be more telling than either brand's marketing. Avoid 4. Quick one. Zara. This one's fast, because the issue is really about business model rather than any single bad batch. This brand's entire supply chain is built for speed, designed to shelf in a couple of weeks, and quality linen genuinely needs time to be stonewashed and softened during production, time a fast fashion timeline doesn't allow. Most linen pieces here are blends with meaningful viscose, polyester, or cotton content to speed manufacturing. If you treat these pieces as disposable, a season or two of wear, the price is fair. If you're expecting a summer staple that holds up year after year, the fabric can't keep that promise, no matter how good the cut looks on the hanger. Avoid 5. H&M. This brand's marketing has gotten cleverer than its fabric has. I understand why conscious collection and responsible sourcing language on the hang tag reads as a quality signal. Those words are chosen specifically because they signal exactly that. Worth noting, this brand actually deserves some credit for pricing that doesn't pretend to be an investment piece. A $20 to $30 linen blend top isn't marketed as heirloom clothing, the way some of the earlier brands on this list still are. Here's the mechanism. The linen pieces in these collections are still blends, and the expectation gap is where the disappointment comes from. Women who grew up with denser, purer linen brands see this on a shelf and assume similar performance from a similar-looking garment. After washing, these blends tend to shrink more aggressively than pure linen, color loss shows up within a few cycles, and pilling around the underarms and strap areas appears within weeks of regular wear. The fix is adjusting expectations to match the price point. Treat it as a beach cover-up for a long weekend, not a wardrobe foundation meant to last until fall. Do it today. If you've bought linen here expecting it to last a full season, plan around 2 or 3 wears per week rather than daily rotation, and you'll likely be far happier with the result. Avoid 6. Shein and Temu. This one's the most straightforward, because the deception is the most direct. Thousands of listings use the word linen in the title at prices around $10 to $15. Reading the actual fabric composition often tells a different story. Polyester with a linen texture finish, or a blend where linen makes up a small decorative percentage rather than a functional one. It doesn't breathe like linen, doesn't soften like linen, and doesn't last like linen, no matter how convincing the product photos look. The real cost isn't the $10 or $15. It's what it does to your expectations of the fiber itself. Plenty of women try this, find it scratchy and shapeless, and conclude linen as a fabric is overhyped, when what they actually wore was polyester wearing linen's name for a season before it fell apart. Now, 3 brands actually worth your money, starting with the one that makes the rest of this list look overpriced. Trust 1. Quince. This brand sells 100% European linen. Shirts around $30, trousers around $40, dresses around $50, using the same flax and mills as labels, charging 4 to 6 times as much. Here's the mechanism behind how that's possible. No retail storefronts, no wholesale middlemen, no celebrity campaigns. This brand works directly with factories and manages its own supply chain, so you're paying for fabric and labor rather than marketing overhead and billboard space. Its linen carries OECO-TEX certification, meaning it's been tested for harmful substances at every production stage, and customer comparisons of hand feel and drape frequently reference premium brands at a fraction of the price. The fix is accepting the one real trade-off: no in-store try-on. Free returns make that a low-risk exchange, though. A trip to the post office rather than a real financial risk. Do it today. Order one basic piece, a shirt or a pair of trousers, specifically to compare against something similar you already own from a pricier brand, and judge the fabric with your own hands rather than any review you've read. Trust 2. Eileen Fisher. This is the premium option, and it's worth the price specifically if you buy it strategically. Here's the mechanism. This brand uses 100% organic linen, dyed to Bluesign environmental standards, and pieces are genuinely designed for a decade or more of wear rather than a season. The fabric softens with each wash instead of degrading, and simple, non-trend-driven cuts mean a piece bought today still looks current years later. Retail runs $128 to $328 per piece, which sounds steep on its own, before you factor in cost per year of actual wear. The fix is buying secondhand rather than full retail. Through resale platforms or the brand's own take-back and resale program, pieces that retailed in the 200s often appear for $75 to $90, with years of wear still ahead of them, since the linen was built to endure resale in the first place rather than fall apart before it ever reaches a second owner. Do it today. Check a resale platform for this brand's linen before assuming full retail is your only option. The selection tends to be larger than most first-time shoppers expect. Trust 3. Everlane. This one sits in the middle, between value pricing and premium quality, running roughly $78 to $198 to blazers, trousers, and button-downs built for settings where you want to look polished without sweating through something delicate in August heat. Here's the mechanism that sets this brand apart from the avoid list: transparency. It publishes the actual production cost of each garment, raw materials, labor, transport, and markup, which almost nothing else in this price range does, letting you see exactly what you're paying for instead of guessing. The fabric weight sits heavier than fast fashion linen, but lighter than the premium option above, which turns out to be the sweet spot for everyday wear that survives regular machine washing without special handling or babying. Do it today. Look up the published cost breakdown for one piece you're considering. Seeing exactly where your money goes is often the clearest way to judge whether a price feels fair. What these 9 brands actually have in common. Here's the pattern worth taking away from all of this, beyond any single brand name. The 3 trustworthy options all sell you the fabric itself rather than a brand experience. Transparency, direct sourcing, or a business model built around durability rather than turnover. The 6 to approach carefully are all, in different ways, more invested in the label than in what's actually inside it, whether that's private equity cost-cutting, a fast fashion timeline that can't accommodate real linen production, or marketing language doing more work than the fiber composition ever could. It's worth being honest that not every brand on the avoid list is dishonest in the same way. A fast fashion brand selling a linen blend at $15 isn't hiding anything if you read the label. The deception is really in the assumption most shoppers bring to the purchase, not in the listing itself. A legacy brand under new ownership quietly thinning its fabric while charging the same price is a different, more troubling kind of shift, because the whole reason you're still shopping there is the trust built by a version of the company that may no longer exist in the same form. Both end in disappointment, but only one of them is really betraying the loyalty of a longtime customer. How to actually check any linen garment. In 60 seconds. Before we wrap up, here's a simple check you can run in any store, on any brand, including ones we haven't covered today. First, check the care label for fiber content. 100% linen versus a blend tells you immediately which category you're in, regardless of what the hang tag or marketing copy claims elsewhere. Second, feel the fabric before anything else. Real linen has a slight crispness fresh off the rack, not immediate softness. Third, hold it up to light if you can. A tighter, more even weave generally indicates a higher quality flax and construction than a loose, uneven one. And finally, check the weight if it's listed anywhere in the product details. That 180 to 260 grams per square meter range is your benchmark for genuine structure without stiffness. None of this requires expertise you don't already have by the end of this video. It requires 30 extra seconds in the fitting room before you commit to a purchase, applied consistently, regardless of which of these 9 brands or any other you're standing in front of. Once you've done this check a handful of times, it stops feeling like a checklist and starts feeling like something your fingers just know how to assess on their own, the same way you can already tell a cheap zipper from a good one without thinking about it. A good linen piece doesn't need to be replaced. It only needs to be washed, worn, and given fabric that was actually built to survive both. Check the fiber content before you check the brand name. Feel for that initial crispness rather than assuming softness means quality, and remember that a familiar logo doesn't guarantee the same fabric it used to represent, even from a brand you've trusted for decades. None of this is really about punishing a brand for changing ownership or refusing to ever shop somewhere on this avoid list again. It's about knowing which of your assumptions are still earning their keep, and which ones were built on a version of a company that quietly became something else while the name on the door stayed exactly the same. That's a small shift in how you shop, but over years of linen purchases, it's the difference between a closet full of pieces that held up and one that quietly needed replacing every couple of summers without you ever quite understanding why. If this helped you look at your own linen shopping differently, hit like and subscribe. I've got a lot more of this coming every week. And tell me in the comments, what's the oldest linen piece still in your closet, and what brand made it? I have a feeling a lot of those answers are brands that don't make linen quite like that anymore.